All was quiet on the West Jefferson streets of May 12, 2024. The quaint little village of central Ohio was as good as asleep on that Sunday afternoon. It was Mother's Day in the United States, and no one was expecting anything too out of the ordinary for a town that rarely made a peep in the first place. However, the tranquility quickly transformed around 4:45 p.m. local time when a family sitting in their living room heard a police cruiser scream by their house, driving at upwards of 100 miles per hour along State Route 142. An intensive police response was an incredibly rare occurrence in West Jefferson, let alone one of such speed and magnitude, which meant something truly terrifying was happening not too far away. The something terrifying came in the form of 22-year-old Ali Hamza Yusuf, a worker at the local Amazon CMH 5 distribution center. The warehouse can be found at 6400 OH29, just beyond the intersection of US Route 40 and State Route 29, located right off the exterior of the West Jefferson city limits. Yusuf, a security officer contracted by a third-party company that staffs Amazon's guard and protection services, had just fired gunshots at his supervisor and was reported to authorities as an active shooter within the Amazon facility. A rush of 911 calls flooded into the local dispatch, with one caller describing the scene as shots being fired inside the building, followed by the screams of an unidentified woman. The second 911 call that came in was dialed by the supervisor themselves. The supervisor told dispatch that the shooter, Yusuf, was actually their trainee at the warehouse, and that shots had been fired but were off target. Apparently, it was in close enough range that the supervisor described it as if Yusuf almost executed them. As these 911 calls were being made, the 100 or so employees working in the Amazon facility were rushing to the exits. They ran outside as Yusuf also fled the area where he had pulled his weapon, a semi-automatic handgun. At one point during their escape, Yusuf made contact with his fellow employees, threatening those who were calling 911 with his gun. Luckily, all it took was the very first 911 call to alert law enforcement of an active shooter situation, and police made haste to State Route 29. The West Jefferson Police Department and the Madison County Sheriff's Office responded to the scene. But by the time the officers arrived, Yusuf had unfortunately fled the area. However, not all was lost in the hunt for Yusuf. Security CCTV footage captured the entire incident as it unfolded, and Amazon immediately released these recordings to aid the investigation. The security camera positioned over the Amazon supervisor's workstation recorded the main piece of incriminating evidence. The footage begins with the supervisor wearing a neon green safety vest, sitting at their computer and facing forward. A few seconds pass before Yusuf enters the frame. He walks in at a normal pace and goes towards his chair, acting as if nothing is amiss before stopping. It appears almost as if he's contemplating what he's about to do, frozen for a split second at the thought of violence. Nonetheless, the devil on his shoulder makes the final call, and Yusuf draws the semi-automatic handgun from his pants and turns to his supervisor. Standing no more than 6 feet away, he aims the pistol directly at the back of his victim's head and pulls the trigger. At this point, it's hard to tell exactly what happens in the footage, as Yusuf continues standing in the same position. He eventually pulls the gun down and adjusts something with the pistol. The supervisor would later tell authorities that the gun Yusuf was using apparently jammed at his initial attempt to fire, sparing the supervisor their life the first time. We say first time because mere moments after we see the gun jam temporarily, Yusuf braces himself again and pulls the trigger again. This time the pistol fires as expected, and we see the muzzle flash as a result. However, there is no ensuing blood spray or flailing of the victim. Rather, the supervisor jumps out of shock before whipping around to see a gun point blank in their face. There is no second guessing what to do. The supervisor leaps from their chair and runs out of the security booth. Yusuf, meanwhile, looks taken aback by what he's done. He flinches as he fires the gun for the final time and fails to pull the trigger at any point after that. He keeps aiming at this supervisor, but once they flee the scene, Yusuf stumbles back before running off in the opposite direction. As he backs off, there appears to be a moment where the gun jams a second time, but in the uproar of the action, he can't fix the issue. After failing to fire off another round with one hand, he briefly exits the frame. However, you can see the shadow of Yusuf then move to the top left part of the screen as if he's looking around for someone. He stands there for just a second before coming back around and running off the right side of the room. Luckily, a second CCTV camera captured the ensuing action. After the supervisor is shot at, they book it out of the security station and deeper into the warehouse. Running so fast, they aren't quite sure what direction to take. It appears the supervisor ducks before running out of frame, as if Yusuf had fired another round. However, there is no evidence a second shot was fired. The next CCTV clip shows Yusuf making his final move inside the Amazon facility. After his supervisor runs off, he walks back around the security station and towards the exit. As Yusuf approaches the gates, he seems to shout behind him, gesturing with his arms. However, he doesn't appear all that scared or flustered by what just transpired. Instead, he walks a calm demeanor, taps his keycard to open the gates, and struts out the front door like nothing happened. This same calm demeanor carries over into the last clip of CCTV footage as Yusuf walks across the driveway and away from the warehouse, most likely to his vehicle. While he doesn't seem to be in any hurry, his work shirt with the security company logo on it has been discarded somewhere off camera. It's possible this was his first step in disguising himself as Yusuf made his very nonchalant getaway. At this stage of the crime, Yusuf is no longer on tape and law enforcement must track his next moves extremely quickly, otherwise they'll risk losing him to the nearby city sprawl of Columbus, Ohio, just a few miles to the east of the West Jefferson Amazon facility. Yusuf himself was obviously thinking the same thing as he headed directly towards Columbus, where he was originally from. His route took him northwest along State Route 29 towards Interstate 70, where he jumped on the eastbound ramp and cruised for about 12 miles. Then he merged onto Interstate 270, a beltway that encircles the Columbus, Ohio metro area, and drove for another 5 miles before exiting the freeway onto Georgeville Road. By this time, all hands were on deck with law enforcement's pursuit. The West Jefferson Police and the Madison County Sheriff's deputies were hot on his tail, alongside the Ohio State Highway Patrol once Yusuf entered their jurisdiction on the interstate. When he entered the Columbus city limits, the Columbus Police Department also lent resources to the chase. Once Yusuf was on Georgeville Road, authorities located his vehicle and a police chase ensued. Yusuf was driving a white Toyota sedan, and he continued driving northeast for about a mile before he came to the intersection of Georgeville and Climb Road. This is where police made contact, as their pursuing officer's dash cam started recording exactly what came next. And it isn't any less miraculous than the first chunk of footage. Take a look.
There they are, there they are.
I'm hit! Shots fired, shots fired, shots fired, suspect.
The dash cam recording begins with a Columbus Police Department cruiser stopped directly behind Yusuf's Toyota. The female CPD officer in the passenger seat talks to her partner in the driver's seat, identifying the perpetrator's vehicle. As she does so, the camera picks up Yusuf opening his driver's side door, stepping outside, and immediately drawing a gun as he begins to fire in the direction of the CPD cruiser. You can hear the same female officer call out, "There they are, there they are." At the same time, a slew of other law enforcement vehicles approach in front of Yusuf. He fires multiple rounds at the CPD cruiser before the rest of the officers all jump out of their vehicles to return shots. Round after round, bullets rip through the air as the shootout intensifies. However, it doesn't last much longer as Yusuf attempts to flee the scene. He reaches the grassy knoll in front of a homeboy's retail store before being struck by a gunshot and collapsing to the ground. This dashcam footage wasn't the only perspective of the crime scene. The driver of the CPD cruiser in question was wearing a body camera, and his device captured the entire incident as well. His footage begins at the same point, with the female officer identifying the vehicle and calling out Yusuf's actions. The male officer barely has time to react before bullets come screaming at the cruiser, with one smashing the driver's side window and hitting the officer in his upper arm. The CPD officer is none worse for the wear though, and proceeds as he was trained. He shouts out before gathering himself and hiding behind his cruiser, returning fire as the shootout reaches its climax. Once Yusuf goes down, the male officer, a 4-year veteran at CPD, then reloads his clip, calling out "I'm hit" to break the silence that immediately follows. He keeps his gun drawn and slowly inches towards the spot where the perpetrator collapsed, confirming the hit. He then radios into dispatch to alert them of his status, and the rest of the police at the scene scream at Yusuf as he remains on the ground and is put into handcuffs. The remainder of the body cam footage depicts the male officer being attended to by his fellow cops, a few of whom check in on his status after hearing he was hit by a gunshot. The officer repeats that he was shot in the arm, but right where his bulletproof vest covers the flesh. While he claims he is okay, not bleeding, and in proper condition, his peers still demand he go to the hospital just to be 100% sure. It's also possible the officer was pushed to go seek medical care, as an official doctor's report would confirm he was shot and aid in whatever prosecution that might be brought upon Yusuf. However, Yusuf did not make it that far, as he succumbed to his gunshot wounds at the hospital after his arrest. He was officially pronounced dead at 6:57 p.m. Why Ali Hamza Yusuf committed these bizarre acts of violence is anyone's best guess, and will now be left a mystery forever. He had no prior arrests or misdemeanors on his record. In fact, his criminal history was non-existent. The investigators also never could figure out why he shot at his supervisor in the first place. He wasn't licensed to carry a gun while on the job at Amazon, and the supervisor stated there was never any indication Yusuf was intending on becoming violent with them. Meanwhile, the CPD officer who was hit did get treated for minor, non-life-threatening injuries at Grant Medical Center. He was released later in the evening on Sunday the 12th, and was the only officer to sustain any sort of wound during the entire incident. The male officer in question is also extremely lucky his condition wasn't any worse. Had that bullet struck just a few millimeters to the left, it might have missed his vest and made a direct impact with his arm. While he probably wouldn't have died, a much more accurate shot by Yusuf certainly could have struck him higher up on his body, possibly in the head and neck area. The good fortune of the male officer is just half of the miracles witnessed in these pieces of footage. The fact that in the beginning, when Yusuf fired the pistol executionary style at point-blank range at his supervisor's head, he dealt with both a jammed gun and the first shot barely missed. It almost cannot be explained with words. The fact that not one but two people could have lost their lives very easily in a matter of mere inches is a testament to how absolutely insane these events truly are. Life itself is a miracle, but sometimes it takes the absolute most evil actions of humanity to prove to us how unbelievably lucky we are to carry on.